Welcome. Tonight, we travel to a small village in the late 18th century, where the narrow street has fallen silent, and a single window glows softly above the darkened cobbles. Inside a modest bookbinder's workroom near the edge of the lane, an apprentice returns to his bench for a few unhurried hours of careful work. You'll stand with him in the warm circle of lamplight, where folded gatherings rest beneath smooth river stones, and simple tools lie arranged along the worn oak surface. The building is quiet. Beyond the plastered walls, the mist moves lazily along the lane. Within the steady glow of oil and glass, the small, deliberate sounds of paper and steel begin. The work moves slowly, gathering by gathering, stitch by stitch, and the quiet of the room holds everything in its patient, ongoing light. The door closes behind him, with a sound that belongs to old wood and careful hands, a soft meeting of edge and frame, the latch settling into place with a small click that seems to travel through the quiet like a dropped stone into still water. The workroom receives him without ceremony, without change, the space holding the same quality of stillness it held when he left it hours ago, when daylight still pressed against the windows and the village beyond moved with purpose and noise. Now the windows show only darkness, and the lamplight inside has become the whole world. He stands just inside the door, coat still buttoned, the chill of the February evening clinging to the wool across his shoulders. The air here is warmer than the stairwell, warmer than the street, and it carries scents that have soaked into every surface over years of work. The dry, slightly sweet smell of good paper, the sharper note of wheat paste kept in its covered jar, the rich warmth of leather stacked in careful rolls along the far wall. Linseed oil, too, from the brushes soaking in their cup. Beeswax that he uses to coat thread before stitching. All of it layered together into something that belongs only to this room, to this work. He breathes it in slowly, feeling the cold air in his lungs give way to warmth. The lamp on the workbench burns steadily, its glass chimney clean, the wick trimmed to an even edge. He left it burning when he went down for supper. A small indulgence, perhaps, but one that means the room stayed warm, stayed ready and alive in his absence. The flame casts light across the broad surface of the bench, across the tools arranged there in their places, across the stacks of paper weighted down with smooth river stones he collected years ago for exactly this purpose. The bench is oak, darkened by age and oil and the touch of countless hands before his own. The surface bears the marks of its use, small nicks from knives, faint stains from paste that seeped beneath protecting boards, the gentle depression worn into the wood where his forearm rests when he holds a book spine steady for sewing. It is scarred and beautiful and entirely familiar, and his eyes move across it now with the ease of long knowing, taking inventory without thought, confirming that everything rests where it should. The folding bone lies parallel to the edge, its surface worn smooth as glass. The backing hammer sits beside it, head down, handle angled slightly to the left. 3 brushes stand in a ceramic cup, bristles up, their wooden handles stained with use. The paste pot waits with its lid seated firmly, and beside it the shallow dish of water for dampening cloth, the surface still and clear as a mirror, reflecting the lamplight in miniature. Paper rests in neat stacks across the left side of the bench. These are sections already folded, gatherings of 8 pages each, pressed flat beneath the river stones that hold them true while the creases set. He can see the edges aligned with precision, the folds crisp and clean, each stack containing enough gatherings for a volume once they are sewn and bound. The paper is good, a pale cream that seems to hold light, thick enough to take ink without bleeding, soft enough to fold without cracking. Beyond the workbench, the room holds its other furnishings in shadow. The tall cabinet where he keeps the rolls of leather and buckram. The smaller shelf with its rows of thread spools wound in linen and silk, organized by weight and color. The press standing silent in the corner, its heavy screw gleaming dully, the wooden platens waiting to receive and hold and shape. The building settles around him with small sounds, the creak of a floorboard somewhere above, the distant closing of a door, the faint rush of wind against the windows facing the street. None of it intrudes. All of it belongs to the evening, to the quiet hours when work continues at its own pace, when there's no hurry, no interruption, only the steady progression of skilled hands moving through familiar tasks. He unbuttons his coat slowly, fingers finding each button in turn, feeling the cold smoothness of horn give way beneath his touch. The coat hangs now on the peg beside the door, and he has moved to the bench, standing before it with the lamplight falling across his hands, across the stacks of folded paper that wait beneath their stone weights. He lifts one of the stones, smooth and gray, river-worn to a perfect oval that fits his palm, and sets it aside on a clear space of wood. The paper beneath it shifts slightly, released from pressure, the top sheet lifting just barely at one corner before settling again. He reaches for the stack, sliding his fingers beneath the bottom sheet, feeling the thickness of the gathered sections, the slight resistance as they cling together from hours of resting under weight. The paper is cool against his skin, dry and clean, and he lifts the entire stack in both hands, bringing it closer to the lamp, tilting it so the light catches the edges. The alignment is not perfect. He can see it now, the way some sheets protrude slightly beyond others, the way the corners do not form a single clean line but rather a series of steps, each one small but visible, each one speaking of paper that has shifted beneath the stone, that has relaxed into its own shape rather than conforming to the precision the work requires. He carries the stack to the center of the bench where the surface is clearest, where the light falls most directly, and he sets it down with care, feeling the soft sound of paper meeting wood. Then he places both palms flat on top of the stack, pressing gently, and begins to tap. The motion is small, just a lifting of the stack by a fraction of an inch and a firm downward tap against the bench surface, the impact traveling through his hands, through the paper, causing the loose sheets to shift and settle. He taps once, twice, feeling the resistance, feeling the way the edges begin to find alignment. Then he rotates the stack 90 degrees and taps again, working the other edge now, coaxing the sheets into agreement. The rhythm builds slowly, becomes steady, and he can feel the change happening beneath his hands. The way the stack grows more solid, more unified, the individual sheets surrendering their small variations and coming together into a single, clean form. The sound of the tapping is quiet but distinct, a soft percussion that punctuates the silence of the room, and he listens to it as much as he feels it, using the sound to judge when the alignment has reached its limit, when further tapping will accomplish nothing more. He lifts the stack again and examines the edges. Better. Not perfect, but better. The corners form a cleaner line now, the sheets aligned closely enough that the eye can read them as a single object rather than a collection of parts. He sets the stack down and reaches for one of the river stones, placing it back on top with a care that seems almost ceremonial, centering it precisely, feeling the small settling as the weight compresses the paper beneath it. Then he moves to the next stack. This one is larger, the sections more numerous, and when he lifts the stone and picks up the pile, he can feel the greater weight of it, the way his hands must spread wider to support it, the way his forearms take the burden differently. He brings it to the center of the bench and begins again. Palms flat, gentle pressure, the lifting and tapping that has become so familiar, his hands perform it without instruction from his mind. Tap, rotate, tap, rotate. He pauses after several rotations and runs his thumb along the foredge of the stack, feeling for the subtle differences that touch can reveal more clearly than sight. The paper is smooth beneath his thumb, but not uniform. Here, a sheet that protrudes slightly. There, a gathering that sits recessed. He adjusts his grip and taps again, more firmly now, encouraging the reluctant sheets into line. When he is satisfied, or as satisfied as the paper will allow, he returns this stack to its place and sets the stone back on top, positioning it exactly where it rested before. The third stack requires the same attention, and the fourth, each one lifted, examined, brought to the center of the bench, tapped into alignment, returned. The stones are moved and replaced, their smooth surfaces growing warm from his hands, from the heat of his palms transferring into the river-worn gray. His fingers find the edges of each gathering as he works, checking not by reading the page numbers printed there, but by touch alone. Feeling for the thickness that indicates the fold, for the slight resistance where one gathering ends and another begins. The paper whispers beneath his touch, a dry sound like leaves shifting, and he listens to it, learns from it, makes small adjustments based on what his fingers tell him. The lamp burns on. The room holds its warmth. His hands continue their careful work. He reaches for the guide, a strip of thick board as long as his forearm, its edges worn smooth, its surface marked with 5 small notches cut at precise intervals. The notches are older than his time in this room, cut by hands he never knew, but he has verified their spacing with calipers and found them true, found them placed with the same care he brings to his own work. The board rests now against the edge of the bench, and he slides it closer, positioning it where the lamplight falls most directly. The first gathering is lifted from its stack. 8 folded sheets nested together, forming a spine along the fold where they meet. He holds it in his left hand, feeling the slight spring of the paper, the way it wants to open, to spread. With his right hand, he brings it to the guide, settling the fold against the notched edge, aligning the top of the gathering with the top of the board. The paper shifts slightly in his grip, and he adjusts, centering it, making sure the spine sits flush against the wood. The awl waits on the bench, a slim tool with a wooden handle worn dark by years of holding, tapering to a steel shaft that ends in a point sharp enough to pierce cleanly without tearing. He picks it up, feeling the familiar weight of it, the way the handle nestles into his palm, the balance of wood and metal that makes the tool an extension of his hand rather than a separate object. He positions the point of the awl at the first notch, feeling the small depression in the wood that guides the placement, and he presses down. The awl moves through the folded paper with a resistance that is firm but yielding. First, the slight puncture of the outer sheet, then the brief passage through the inner leaves, and then the final push through the innermost fold. The sound is soft, a small tearing whisper, and he feels the moment when the point emerges on the other side, when the steel touches the board beneath and goes no further. He rocks the awl slightly, widening the hole just enough to ensure clean passage for thread, then withdraws it with a smooth pull that leaves the paper intact around the piercing. The second notch. The awl descends again, finding resistance and pressing through before emerging. The motion is the same, but never identical. Each gathering has its own thickness, its own density, each fold its own particular grain that affects how the paper yields. He attends to these differences without thinking about them, adjusting pressure by instinct, by the accumulated knowledge of hundreds of piercings performed in this same manner. Third notch. Fourth. Fifth. The gathering is pierced now, 5 holes running in a line along its spine, and he sets it aside to his right, beginning a new stack. Then he reaches for the next gathering from the weighted pile. This one feels slightly thicker in his hand. Perhaps the paper absorbed more moisture from the air. Perhaps the folds are less compressed. And when he aligns it against the guide and brings the awl to the first notch, he can feel the difference in resistance. The point pushes through more slowly, requiring more deliberate pressure, and he gives it, steady and even, not forcing but not hesitating either. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The pierced gathering joins the first, and he reaches for the third. The rhythm begins to establish itself now, becomes something he can settle into. The lifting of the gathering, the positioning against the guide, the 5 careful piercings, the setting aside. His hands know the sequence, perform it with a precision that requires no counting, no conscious tracking of which hole comes next. The notches guide the awl pierces, the paper yields, and the work continues. He does not count the gatherings. There is no need. The stack beneath the stone will diminish at its own pace, and the stack of pierced sections will grow. And when the work is done, it will be done. But that moment exists somewhere ahead in time that does not concern him now. Now there is only this gathering, this alignment, this piercing. The lamplight catches the steel of the awl each time he lifts it, a small flash of brightness between piercings. The sound of the tool moving through paper becomes a steady punctuation, a gentle whispering, and then the soft, settling sound as each completed gathering is added to the growing pile. His left hand grows familiar with the weight and feel of the paper, learning to judge the thickness before the awl even touches the fold. His right hand maintains the same angle, the same pressure, piercing hole after hole with a consistency that shows in the clean alignment of the piercings, in the way each hole sits precisely where the notch dictates, with no variation. The stack of unpierced gatherings diminishes. He does not look at it to measure progress, simply reaches for the next one when his hand finds air instead of paper. The movement is automatic. The reaching, the lifting, the positioning, and the awl continues its work. A gathering slips as he positions it, and he adjusts, realigning the fold against the guide, making sure the top edge sits where it should before the first piercing. The awl descends. The paper yields. The gathering is corrected, completed, set aside. Another gathering feels different in his hand, perhaps cut from a different section of the sheet, and the awl meets more resistance at the first piercing. He maintains steady pressure, and the point breaks through, finds its way through the inner leaves, emerges on the far side. The remaining holes follow, each one requiring the same firm patience, and then the gathering joins the others. The river stone that weighted the unpierced stack sits now on only a few remaining gatherings. He can see the gray oval of it resting on cream paper, can see how the pile has thinned beneath it, but he does not pause to count what remains. His hand simply reaches for the next gathering, lifts it, brings it to the guide. The awl rises and falls. The paper whispers. The holes appear in their precise spacing, and the work continues in the lamplight, in the warmth and the quiet that holds no urgency, no destination. Only the steady repetition of practiced hands performing familiar tasks. The awl is set aside now, returned to its place on the bench, and he reaches instead for the spool of thread. Pale linen, 3-ply, wound tight and even. The thread catches the lamplight as he draws it from the spool, a length measured by extending his arm fully, then measured again, doubled, the strands lying parallel across his palm before he cuts them free with the small blade kept for this purpose. The needle waits in a shallow dish, a curved thing of steel with an eye large enough to accept the doubled thread, but small enough to pass through the pierced holes without enlarging them. He picks it up between thumb and forefinger, feeling the cool smoothness of the metal, and brings the cut end of the thread to the eye. The threading requires steadiness. The linen fibers are soft, not stiff like wire, and they tend to spread and fray at the cut end, making the eye seem smaller than it is. He wets the thread between his lips, tasting nothing, pressing the fibers together with his tongue, and brings it to the needle again. The thread misses the eye on the first attempt, catches on the second, and he draws it through, pulling until the doubled strands are even, until the needle sits at the midpoint of the length. He reaches for the first pierced gathering, the one at the bottom of the stack to his right, and opens it carefully, feeling the fold release, the pages spreading to reveal the spine with its 5 clean holes running in a line. He positions it before him on the bench, holding it open with his left hand, while his right brings the threaded needle to the first hole from the inside. The needle pushes through, the thread following, sliding through the paper with a whisper so faint it is almost imagined. He pulls the thread after it, drawing it through until only a short tail remains on the inside, enough to be secured when the time comes. Then he brings the needle to the second hole from the outside, pushing it back through, feeling the slight resistance as the steel parts the paper fibers, watching as the thread emerges on the inside once more. The motion reverses. Outside to inside. Inside to outside. The needle travels through the holes in sequence, and the thread follows, forming a line of stitches along the spine, each one drawn snug but not tight. Each one settling into place with a soft tension that holds without strain. His fingers find the rhythm of it, the pushing of the needle, the pulling of the thread, the way his left hand adjusts the gathering to keep it stable while his right performs the stitching. The thread makes a small sound as it moves through the holes, a sliding friction that is part cloth, part paper, and he listens to this sound, uses it to judge the tension, to know when to pull and when to ease. At the final hole, he draws the thread through and pauses, holding the stitch with his finger while his other hand adjusts the gathering, checking the alignment of the spine, making sure the pages sit square and true. Then he pulls the thread taut, feeling the resistance as the stitches tighten along the fold, as the binding begins to take its shape. The second gathering is lifted and positioned atop the first, spine aligned to spine, holes matching holes. The needle enters from the outside this time, beginning at the head of the gathering, and the thread follows the same path in reverse, outside to inside, inside to outside, linking the second gathering to the first with stitches that pass through both, that join them into a growing hole. He pulls the thread through each hole with care, maintaining tension, watching the path of the linen as it weaves in and out, as it creates a structure that will hold these pages together through years of opening and closing, of handling and reading. The thread gleams faintly in the lamplight, a pale line against the cream paper, and his fingers guide it with a precision that requires no thought, only attention. The third gathering joins the second. The needle moves through the holes, the thread follows, and the spine grows thicker, grows more substantial. He can feel the weight of it now in his left hand, the way the sewn sections have begun to form a single object rather than separate pieces. The next gathering. The needle rises and falls. The thread slides through with its soft whisper. His breathing has slowed, deepened, falling into time with the rhythm of the stitching. Breath in as the needle pushes through, breath out as the thread is drawn tight. The stack of unsewn sections diminishes as the sewn text block grows. He does not count. He does not measure. His hands simply continue, reaching for the next gathering, positioning it, threading the needle through the waiting holes, pulling the stitches snug. The thread whispers. The paper settles. The lamplight holds steady, and the work continues. He sets the needle down and lifts the sewn sections in both hands, feeling the weight of them, the way they hold together now with the coherence they lacked when separate. The spine faces him, and he runs his thumb along the length of it, feeling the ridge of thread, the slight unevenness where some stitches sit tighter than others, where some gatherings have settled more snugly into the binding. There's a place near the center where the thread feels loose beneath his touch. Not dramatically so, but enough that his thumb can press the linen deeper into the valley between gatherings. Enough that he can feel the give. He turns the text block to examine it in the lamplight, tilting it so the shadow reveals what his fingers detected. And yes, there it is. A stitch that has not been drawn as tight as the others, that allows too much movement, too much space. He picks up the needle again, though it is no longer threaded, and uses the point to work beneath the loose stitch, sliding the steel under the linen, lifting it slightly away from the paper. Then he sets the needle aside and takes the thread between his fingers, pulling gently, feeling the resistance as the stitch tightens, as the slack is taken up and distributed elsewhere along the spine. The gathering shifts slightly as he pulls, settling closer to its neighbor, and he holds the tension for a moment before releasing it, testing whether it will hold. The thread relaxes just barely, not returning to its previous looseness, but not maintaining the full tightness either. He adjusts it again, pulling from a different angle, coaxing the linen into the position he wants, and this time, when he releases it, the stitch holds better, though not perfectly. He runs his thumb over it again, feeling the improvement, accepting what the thread and paper will allow. Near the tail of the text block, 2 pages have shifted during the sewing, their edges no longer aligned with the others. He can see the protrusion, the way the corners extend beyond the block's edge by perhaps the width of a fingernail. He sets the sewn sections down on the bench and opens them carefully to the misaligned gathering, supporting the spine with one hand while the other finds the errant pages and presses them back into position. The paper resists slightly. It has been folded and pressed, pierced and sewn, and it has found a shape it wishes to maintain. But he is patient, pressing firmly but not forcefully, encouraging rather than demanding. The pages shift gradually, their edges retreating back into alignment, and he holds them there while his other hand smooths the fold, reinforcing the correction. When he releases the pressure, the pages stay where he has placed them, though he suspects they may shift again with handling, may require this same adjustment another time. He closes the gathering back into the text block and runs his palm over the entire foredge, feeling for other protrusions, other misalignments that his eyes might have missed. There are thread ends protruding from several points along the spine. The tails left when he began each new length, the remnants from securing the stitches. He reaches for the small scissors, their blades sharp and pointed, and he brings them to the first thread end, positioning the blades close to the spine but not so close as to risk cutting the working thread. The scissors close with a soft snip, and the excess falls away, a small piece of linen drifting down to the bench surface. He works his way along the spine, trimming each tail, leaving just enough length that the threads will not pull free, but removing the excess that would catch or tangle or simply offend the eye. Snip, snip. The small sounds punctuate the quiet, and the trimmed ends accumulate on the bench like pale seeds scattered across dark wood. When the trimming is finished, he sets the scissors aside and lifts the text block again, examining it from different angles in the lamplight, looking for other adjustments that might be needed, other small corrections that would improve the work. His fingers find the spine again, pressing gently along its length, learning its character, understanding where it is strong and where it might benefit from further attention. He sets it back down on the bench, positioning it carefully, and his hands rest for a moment on either side of it, palms flat against the wood, feeling the warmth of the lamp, the texture of the oak beneath his skin. He remains at the bench, hands resting on either side of the sewn text block, fingers curved slightly against the oak. The lamplight falls across his knuckles, across the pale thread trimmed close to the spine, across the river stones that hold the remaining gatherings in their patient waiting. His breathing has settled into a rhythm that matches the room itself, slow, steady, barely audible beneath the faint sounds of the building settling around him. The warmth from the lamp reaches his face, his forearms where they rest against the bench edge. He can feel the heat radiating from the glass chimney, from the metal base that holds the reservoir of oil, and the warmth soaks into his skin the way lamplight soaks into wood, becoming part of the surface rather than simply touching it. His eyes move across the tools arranged before him, the awl with its darkened handle, the needle resting in its dish, the scissors with their pointed blades catching small points of light. Each object sits exactly where he placed it, where he has placed it countless times before. And the familiarity of their positions creates a kind of map his hands can read without looking, a geography of work and practice and repetition. The text block between his hands holds its shape, the gatherings compressed together by thread and tension into something more unified than the separate sections that came before. The spine shows the record of his work, the line of stitching, the small adjustments, the places where thread enters and exits paper. It is not complete. More gatherings wait beneath their stones, and beyond those, leather waits on its shelf. Paste waits in its covered jar, and all the other materials and steps that will transform these sewn sections into something whole. But that transformation exists ahead, in time not yet arrived, and here, now. There is only this moment of rest between one action and the next. This pause exists as part of the rhythm of work. The breathing spaces between stitches, between piercings, between the lifting and setting down of tools. Around the room, other volumes rest in various states of becoming. On the shelf behind him, 3 text blocks wait for their covers, spines exposed, thread visible. On the press in the corner, boards are held under pressure, glue drying slowly in the darkness between the platens. Near the cabinet, a stack of leather pieces lies cut to size, their edges not yet turned, not yet fitted to the books they will protect. The room holds all of this work, all of these unfinished objects, and they create a presence that is neither demanding nor passive, neither urgent nor forgotten. They simply wait for the hands that will return to them, for the hours that will bring them closer to completion, for the steady accumulation of small actions that transforms materials into books. The lamp burns on, its flame unwavering behind the glass. The oil in the reservoir will last through the night and into morning if needed. The wick feeding steadily, the light holding constant. The warmth continues to radiate outward, and he continues to receive it, his hands absorbing the heat from the bench, his face tilted slightly toward the lamp's glow. His fingers rest against the oak. The text block waits between his palms. The tools gleam softly in the light, and the stacks of paper hold their positions beneath the smooth gray stones. The room breathes around him in its quiet way, and he breathes with it, part of its rhythm, part of its patient, ongoing presence. The night continues beyond the windows,